room, have we? Right. Are you ready? Yeah. I'll come back to the questions. When I get them up as we're going through, you'll see all the Slido questions anyway as we go through the next couple of sessions and into the panel session. So we're going to look at the value of the real value of shipping in the supply chain now, and look at some of the ways that we see the industry integrating. My idea here is to have a conversation about how we see the maritime shipping industry in that bigger perspective, where we see the connections and where we see that's how we see this transformation creating the opportunities for the industry. So I'm going to invite now from Twill Logistics, Thrills Stovnik, CEO, to come up and talk about the customer focus in logistics and how we could do that. After that, as I mentioned, we've got Alexander Vavarenko, CEO of ShipNext, looking at the aspects of cryptocurrency in the industry, and particularly a new platform that you're launching within the business. And then we'll have a panel session where I'm going to invite Fred Kaiser from Block Shipping and Oksana Neza from Ship Management to come up for the discussion at the end of that session. So if I could then invite Trolls to come up, please. And that is yours.
Thank you. I'm good.
You stand there.
You first one?
Yes, please.
Alright. Hi guys. So, Daniel's name, Troels, CEO of Twill Logistics. And Twill Logistics is a digital freight forwarder that is part of the Maersk Group, more specifically part of the logistics arm of Maersk called Damco. So Twill Logistics is a startup within the Maersk family, where we're trying to start all over, basically move out of the headquarters, hire different people, different roles, different backgrounds, try to define a new culture, and reinvent the way we do freight forwarding. So my aim of talking to you today, I only have 10 minutes, is try to convince you that digitization is not a solution, it's a tool. And it's a tool we need to use to solve our problems, but it will never be the solution to our problems. I think that's really critical. Can you go to the next slide? Yes. So I stole this quote out of the new Freight.us, which is also one of the startups that have been around for 5 years or so, but a marketplace within shipping or within freight forwarding, where you can have buyers and sellers of freight meet up. But basically, the quote here is trying to break down the difference between a B2B world and a B2C world. Now let me just read to you. So this Jared Spool, he's an expert within the UX, and UX it means user experience. So basically, the experience you're getting from, for example, going into a website can be very different depending on what kind of UX you set up. But he's saying one of the great myths about the web is that there's a difference between the business-to-consumer sites and business-to-business sites. But having looked into this for the last 10 years, we can conclusively say you won't find any differences in how people behave on one side or the other. This is 10 years old, this quote. So I think it's an important thing to think about when you're looking at what we're trying to do when I'm digitizing the freight forwarding world, is that we don't think about this as a B2B environment. We really compare ourselves to a B2C environment, because we think there's no difference anymore. So you go to the next slide again. One of the key things that are winning in today's environment, if you're looking at the companies that are successful, what do they have in common? The key thing they have in common is simplicity. So one of my favorite examples is Uber. Uber have done absolutely nothing new. There's still a car coming to pick you up, and it's doing exactly the same thing a taxi did in the 1930s. Absolutely nothing new. The only thing they've done is create a completely new user experience. So how do I interact with the service of a taxi actually picking me up? What kind of service am I getting from that driver? How do I pay that driver? How do I tell them the address? All that, it just lumped into a simplicity tool. The same thing if you're looking at a lot of other, so Tesla, yes, it's about a electrical car, but it's about the design. It's about how smooth it looks, how simple it is to use. So we're just seeing all of these fantastic companies. A lot of these companies, well, there are some old companies here. I use PayPal because I think they're one of the first ones that really did it. But a lot of these companies have come in from absolutely nothing and completely changed the industry. And without inventing a new solution, just creating a simplistic, user-friendly version of an existing solution. Which I think is the key. Well, what are we doing in our industry? So if you go to the next slide. So we know for a fact that simplicity and user-centric simplicity is winning. These are the guys that are making the billions of dollars. These are the guys who are making the front lines, the headlines of basically newspapers every day. And what are we doing in our industry? And in my view, after working at Twill for now almost 2 years, is that we're delivering internal focused complexity. So how many times during the day are you speaking about your customer? And I don't care if you work in finance, you work in HR, if you work in operations, how many times do you actually speak about what kind of experience is the customer getting from buying the service that you live off? I think it's a too-used statement, but if there's no customers, you don't have a job. And if you start looking at our industry from outside in, then no wonder we are seeing startups. No wonder that people start to invest into building these companies that will disrupt our industry, because they're looking at how can an industry like this work in 2018. They're looking at the brands on the other side, and you see those guys are winning. So what happens the day that an Uber-like experience is available in the shipping industry? And yes, we built some really high barriers of entry so they won't get in, but sometimes they will. And if we haven't ourselves thought about how we actually change, how we develop a new user-centric solution, then we don't have a chance. And that's kind of what I try to preach with what we want to do with Twill. So it's not so much about the tool. It's not so much about what kind of algorithms you use or what kind of technology you use. There's always technology. My view is always, in our industry, we start talking about blockchain, we start talking about Internet of Things, we talking about a lot of things, but 70% of our current tools, current tool is Microsoft Excel. So why are we talking about blockchain when we haven't gotten out of Excel yet? So let's just use what we have there. So we go to the next slide. This is what we tried to do. So the reason why we started Twill, Merck and Damco decided that we want to revamp the user experience, the customer experience of buying a freight solution, but we don't trust ourselves enough to say we can do this from just setting up a project in the corner and call it Project User Experience and think that we will actually generate some real results. Because then you are subject to the day-to-day interactions with a legacy business, with legacy thinking, with traditions, with a lot of people with a lot of good experiences, but also experiences that will hinder you in thinking new. So we decided, let's start over. Let's found a new company, and set them aside. Put, of course, freight forwarding experiences into this company here. We're not that blue-eyed, but also mix it with people that have UX experience, and people who have design experience, and people who have, of course, technology experience. And then start building Agile. So, how many in here, by a show of hands, will confidently say they know what Agile means? Okay, that's pretty good. Would you have also said that 2 years ago? It's a nice word, but it's being buzzed like there's no tomorrow. But nonetheless, What it means for us is build very, very quickly. You give it to users, see how they interact with it, learn how they use it, and then use that feedback to improve it. So when we build Twill, we have an idea. I have an idea of what Twill will look like in 5 years from now, 3 years from now. I have an idea, but it's also 100% sure that the sports car of this Twill edition I have in my head right now of how Twill is going to look is never going to look like that, which is great because things evolve. So if we just sat in the basement for the next 3 years and just spent $50 million developing what the solution we think is going to be perfect for the market, and then launch it into the market, then the only thing that's going to be, well, one of the two things could happen. Either somebody beat us to it, or nobody wants it anymore. That's the only two things that can happen. Because in 3 years, look at the software used today compared to, well, take Excel out of the equation, but look at the software used today compared to the software used 3 years ago. So we actually, from we wrote the first piece of code on Twill until we had the first customer using Twill, it took 20 weeks. And to be honest, it was embarrassing to give it to a customer and say, okay, try it out now, we are ready. But you learn so much from it. And what we thought was important showed up not to be important. What we thought we had covered, we actually didn't have covered. So just a couple of weeks with customers really using your product, you learn so much. So already when you're going from what we call the skateboard version of the sports car, you start evolving. And now we work in 2-week sprints, which means at the end of every 2 weeks, you always have a new feature to push into the platform of Twill. So we ensure that we keep customers engaged. We see that customers are all asking for a specific function. Then that's the most important function to build. If Merge comes around and asks us for a function, or Damco comes around and asks us for a function, we tell them no. If the customer tells us the same thing, then we have something, but if not, we're never going to do it. Because our industry, which is good, is extremely focused on bringing down cost. So we have to balance the fact that having a digital platform to interact with our customers is always, it's exciting for a big corporation because that means opportunity to optimize internal processes. But if you start allowing that to be our primary driver, then we'll never succeed in building something that's actually going to change the way we do the customer experience within freight. So my comment is focus on the user. Work in short sprints, short iterations, be ready to throw out stuff, build minimum viable products of stuff. Only spend 2 weeks building it, get it out into production, test it. If it doesn't work, throw it out. If it works, make it better. Because that's the way you can save millions and millions of dollars instead of just sitting in a box developing something you think is going to use, your user's going to like. The last slide, then I'm going to shut up. So, have a look at Twill Logistics. See what we can do. We are by no means perfect. We are on this continuous evolution journey. We started doing only full container load from China to the UK, but today we have much more than that. But we're probably, I don't know, 15% there. That's why we sit with customers every week to understand what do we actually need to do. And then we're building on the back of the infrastructure of Damco and Maersk, which we think is a good foundation for actually being able to combine the digital world with the actual physical world of moving a container. Because the container doesn't move at the click of the button. Somebody still have to load the container. Did I do it within 10 minutes? Cool. That's it from me.
And I'm Alexander from ShipNext, CEO of ShipNext. Piers, this may not work.
While you're flashing the slides, I wanted. Do you hear me well? Does everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to actually. I don't have a click control.
It doesn't work.
how does it work? You know, I wanted to tell you an example. I was, I think, in my 7th grade in the 90s, and I remember, you know, we had 2 classes, one based on Microsoft computers or IBM, and the other one on Macintosh. And I was always, you know, questioning myself, why the hell do they create this Macintosh? And then a classmate of mine said, you know, I actually heard this guy, later on I found out about Steve Jobs. He said, you know, just this guy said that in 10 years, he will create a company which is #1. And, you know, later on you had Apple. So sometimes it's not about actually giving clients what they want step by step, but creating demand, creating something which is completely revolutionized, and making sure that everyone follows. This is how actually the concept of Apple looked like from the beginning. They created something completely different and incompatible with anything else you had, and made sure that people loved it so much that everybody had to adapt to it. So, you know, a bit of background: I'm a founder of a shipping company. We are actually carriers of oversized and heavy lift goods, as well as dry bulk, with offices in Dubai, Odessa, Hamburg, Paris, and Genoa. And 2 years ago, actually 5 years ago, I was sitting down and also doing some chartering as well as the overall development, and I started questioning myself how routine the day-to-day activity is. I had all my managers stuck in front of their computers trying to click through all the emails, and make all those calculations over and over again. Sometimes we went down into trying to find the description of a ship or some internal dimensions before we could finally see whether the cargo fits or no. And I said, we should completely redo the whole process, and we started creating ShipNext, which today solves a lot of problems of the industry, and eventually helps match a cargo to the ship in just 1 second. So, the process in brief is described on here. Of course, we had to start from the very counterproductive steps, because the eventual product can be adapted to EDIs, to your internal data flows. But of course, we had to make it very user-friendly, and we simplify the process to actually use natural language processing to process any incoming email. So today you send an email to fix@shipnext.com, and it will process no matter how you write it, with mistakes, without mistakes, short or English or long English form. Then it uses this algorithm to split cargoes and ships, and then makes millions of calculations every time something changes in the big data, to actually yet again match the right ship to the right cargo. Then it allows freight negotiations to take place, the reverse auctioning, if anyone knows what that means. The freight bidding process. Then we signed an agreement with BIMCO. We also have our clients integrate their charter parties to instantly create a charter party. And we are now preparing for the first smart contract and an electronic bill of lading at the end of April or beginning of May. I will just go through it. So this is what the shipping, in this marketplace or industry looks today. You have a lot of the shipping sector, let's say, of the transport industry looks today. You have brokers, agents, traders, forwarders, and carriers, all sometimes mixed in different roles. And this is what we introduced. We created a kind of one smart algorithm-based marketplace, which allows this immediate problem solving. I will go a bit through it, and then I will explain to you how it works in reality. So if you're a carrier, and I think most of you are related to the transport, it uses over 80 different elements to actually match the cargo to a ship. It uses internal dimensions, restrictions of hatch, holds, cranes, port restrictions, ice class restrictions, flag, and so on. So all these things which a usual manager would somewhere know, somewhere he would remember it, but they would never be his data or his knowledge will never be maybe up to date. never be complete, so he will still go and make the search. Our concept is actually creating a marketplace which is always updated by daily users into the largest network of real-time based databases. This is how ShipNext looks today. We have over 1,000 clients. Some don't actually even register at the moment online. They just send an email and receive a solution back, and they're free to do their own trading with the counterpart if they know who is behind the business. But of course, a lot to register. We are in talks with some large trading houses to actually integrate into a reverse auctioning process. And here's, for example, what you get when you click on the cargo. You have the short and very nicely presented form of the data you would usually get from the email. And on the right-hand side, you instantly get the solutions in terms of what's the best matching ship. Of course, some clients say, yeah, but why are you showing me a 20,000 tonner if I only have 5,000 tons of steel? And this is where we actually go into the phase of extending the algorithms into matching now 2 or 3 cargoes as part cargo on one ship. I will wind a bit. This is of course a mobile application. Some clients like using it as they're on the road. This is how we compare to different other solution providers. Some are stuck at the email sourcing. We use linear programming, big data analysis, natural language processing, of course, as well, machine learning to go beyond that and to do the automation of the processes. And here I would go into a bit more detail. So we started off with matching one cargo to one ship from one port of loading to one port of discharge. And this is where we are today, because one large steel trader, he says, look, sometimes I ship cargo from one port of loading to 2 or 3 ports of discharge. So please, help me integrate it further, and then I will switch completely on ShipNext to do the trading. And of course, this is where we are today. We already created an algorithm which will help you do parsing. But here I have to just tell you how it happens. We of course take one client at a time, because the system takes time to be taught as well. And of course, the more data it has, the more exact the calculations can be. Of course, we have over 3,000 ships with full internal dimensions. But this process has to involve players to make sure that their ship is actually correctly presented, their cargo is correctly presented. The port or terminal operators have a possibility of exactly and correctly presenting their own tariffs or restrictions. And this is what our solution for the container industry looks like. Of course, we are not going to go into container industry until we have a partner. But the same algorithm can be used to match 18,000 cargoes or containers on one ship from 2 or 3 places of loading to 2 or 3 places of discharge. Of course, as I said, we will never do it alone, but this is the same algorithm which eventually some clients would choose when they are ready for a real-time container moving system. And real-time meaning that you will exactly know that a certain place is available for your ship, and like you have in airline sector, where you can buy your ticket and know exactly that you have it. And the same algorithm can be used then for solving that part. And of course, we are down to the supply chain, where shipping is actually the key to automation or digitalizing the whole process, because the trucking company or Uber, Freight, or any other solution which is available for land transportation will never be properly matched to the port until it knows in real time when and where and which ship is going to arrive at the port of loading and at the port of discharge. So actually, shipping has always been a very big stumbling block, because once the ship sailed, you hardly ever knew where it is. Then, of course, you had satellites where you could already see where that ship is, and as the process is evolving, you have more and more possibilities. And the more you can track, this is why we started with general cargo or bulk. it's easier. It's one cargo, one ship. You know, there's nothing difficult about matching that in real time. You can easily track 10,000 tons of steel or 10,000 tons of grain. With containers, it's more complex. This is why we have tracking systems. Of course, you have to then make sure that you're working with a certain partner, because once a container is stuck somewhere on road or at some border point, then you should know that you have a slot available, and maybe you can get better utilization by getting another container on it real time. Once we create a solution of making smart contracts, we go into having not a market but an ecosystem where you can link other players into the process. But in fact, here I would like to tell you how the smart contract and electronic bill of lading will be created. At the end of April, we have already agreed with a client, with a steel trader and a port, to actually create an electronic bill of lading using their EDIs or their involvement into cross-checking or verification of key elements like the vessel, the dates of loading, the port of discharge, and the cargo description. And once they all verify that the information, the bill of lading becomes electronic. Yeah, and that actually, and as you know, in shipping, once a cargo is loaded, whether it's lost or not lost, or the ship is not lost or not lost, the freight is still earned. So it's the process of loading the cargo on board which triggers the execution. And as from the point when you have all these documents, all the main elements standardized, you can standardize the payment. I will go further by showing you. So this is actually what we have created already, and the last three are still to be made. The blockchain process is here split into two parts. So the first one is the actual smart contract and electronic bill of lading and the transaction. For the transaction, we need a electronic currency. It could be anything. We are creating our own, which is going to be freight token, ship token or ship coin, but it could be eventually crypto euro or crypto dollar, and one day it will certainly be available too. But the other solution is actually to create a decentralized network, and this will only happen once we train and optimize ShipNext as a centralized solution, and then let it go to internal servers. So imagine your large company having your internal flow, your cargoes, your order book, and then just seeing all the solutions you have from the market, being containerized solutions, or maybe bulk ships, or multi-purpose or heavy lift ships available. You can use your interface to the decentralized network to make matching, to make deals inside your system. And once you do that, the information about that ship being used by you be spread around through all the other users. And that's a kind of a blockchain solution that we are going to aim at in the next 2 or 3 years. Of course, with the compliance as they go along. So that is a process which we are slowly trying out on one of the clients, but I know some are thinking of that, to use these algorithms in actually using them to match their assets, to match their infrastructural elements of their supply chain. So if you have an autonomous ship, for example, running between two terminals, with our algorithm, you can make sure that it runs at the correct speed. If there is anything happening on road in real time, bad weather or congestion at the terminal of loading or terminal of discharge, or the ship is broken, the algorithm then sources out a replacement, or it helps it run at a certain speed, or slow down or speed up to match a certain schedule. And of course, it's related to the production. Don't look at this. I've actually sent the wrong presentation. But this is what I've been talking about, is this decentralized marketplace, which eventually can be used for creating a blockchain for the industry. And before I close, I wanted to actually tell you that all this has been used in practice in the past. It just was completely inefficient due to some factors. And one of them was lack of computers. There was very slow and inefficient communication, no two-way communication flows, and a lot of human factor. But it was used at the end of the 80s in the Soviet Union, in fact. It was a planned economy. They had a lot of critical mass of infrastructure to manage, and they used linear programming to actually plan the economy. This is why the economy was called plan. But because they made this plan for a year ahead, and they told every factory how to deliver their products, how many trucks they should load every month, and so on. Every day, with changes that took place, the system got more and more complicated and stopped working, because if there is a delay, there was no two-way flow, and no quick and instant decision making. And this is why the whole economy collapsed. Of course, today with the computers, with algorithms, with the speed of communication and transparency, you can make it work. And this is why we use this concept to actually do whatever my managers do in hours and days and get the result in just one click. If you have any questions, I would be pleased to answer.
Thank you very much. Good, thank you. Well, that is Truls and Alexander. Alexander, could you go just through questions? And Truls, if you could go up front. And also now, Frank Kaiser and Oksana Nesa, please. Our two additional panelists for this session. Just a reminder, there are some questions on Slido. If you could answer those, if we get a chance, I'll go through to them. We've got a 15-minute session here, looking at some of the angles here that have been addressed. But before I do that, I wanted to ask Frank about block shipping, because I think you're doing what Alexander says he's planning to do in a couple of years' time. You're already doing a little bit of that with cryptocurrencies, at least, isn't that? Are you offering a coin offering on cryptocurrencies?
Yeah, there's been an initial free offering of coins, which has been completed now, and there will be a public offering coming towards the end of May.
So what is it exactly? I'm a novice here, and I'm going to guess there's a few other novices who don't want to put their hands up, but I'll put it up for them. I don't really know what you're talking about. And I think I might not be the only one.
What you have to look at is that one thing is the business model, another thing is how you finance it.
Right.
So the business model is to make a global registry of dry containers and reefer containers, of containers in itself, of the steel box, not the cargo, but the steel box. Because the steel box is an integrated part of the container shipping. That is where you put in all your goods and where you take them out from. You can't do without it in container shipping, obviously, as opposed to tankers or dry bulk or general cargo, where you got crates and you put it in, and the steel box is going to move around. It's a little bit like a shopping net in a supermarket, where the shopping net is following the goods all the time. In the world, there's about 27 million of these steel boxes. There's a huge part of them which are just standing and waiting to either be activated or to be transported back to areas where they can't be activated. So the whole idea here is to optimize the flow of these steel boxes to ensure that you have many as exactly you need, you know where they are, and you make sure that you optimize the use of them. You sweat your assets.
Okay. So it's about knowing where.
It's a complementary. It's not the same.
No,
it's a complementary product.
Yes.
I've studied it. It's a good concept, but it's just we can, let's say, partner up together to make it better. solution. That's how.
But it's very much knowing, it's getting a global picture of where the assets are at any one time.
It's exactly where they are, and make it possible for people to interchange the containers, so the worst they can.
I've seen some moves along similar lines over the years. I've seen companies say, yes, we're going to have this golden solution so that any shipper will know, or any container line will know, wherever their boxes are, or empty or full, at any one time. So why are you coming up with something that seems already to have been tried? So why is yours going to be more successful?
More successful than that. First of all, it's because it's the idea is that you have a global register for all the containers. So everything that is in the market, not just for one company or the other, or two companies, or for a leasing company, but everybody has it in there. So you have all the details of who owns the containers, how is it financed, all the details that you can use. Then combined with the tracking device, you also know where is the asset. When Hanjin, as everybody heard about, went under, then the insurance industry, and they're not finishing calculating, but they lost something between $60 and $80 million on containers that couldn't be found. Because as soon as the business started to disintegrate, data is not coming in, it's not updated, it's not flowing out of the systems, and then you don't know where your assets are.
Right, so that's the first bit.
That's the first business
model.
That's the first bit. That's the business
the coin offering.
Then there's the coin offering. So when you do a startup, as people who have been involved in startups know, you come from an idea phase of wanting to bring it up, then you have to get it capitalized. So either you come with all your money yourself, which is not many people that can do that, or then you can go and sell your idea to various investors. In general, if you come up with a good idea and you have to sell it to investors in order to market it, you will give away between 80 and 90% of the rights to that business to the investors, because they want to be sure that they control what they put money into. If you do an ICO or go out in the cryptocurrency market, well, what you are selling is a right to earn on the cryptocurrency, but not a right to run the business. So you are not taking a share of the business, you are not a shareholder of the business, you're an investor. The difference with the block shipping, or the way that we have made it, is that we have made two things into it. One thing is that you have an automatic cap, which says that if you put in $100, if everything goes really, really bad, it can never go more bad than you get 25 back. So you have a protection of 25% of your investment. That can be good or bad, or whatever you want to do. The other thing is that we are not gambling on that the currency, the cryptocurrency in itself, is going to increase in value based on the perception of how that currency is developing. But we take a percentage of the revenue, the top line of the company, goes in to feed the box where the cryptocurrency is in. So you're starting to get 22% or 25% into your investment. As the revenue increases, that drops further and further down to 5%. But you're constantly getting an influx of revenue, top line, not as you would as a shareholder, where you get it out of business results.
Well, why can't you do something like crowdsourcing, right? There's a lot of people talking about crowdsourcing,
I can explain just with the two examples. Well, first of all, it's now becoming more often very similar to IPO as well. But it's a very simple way of doing an IPO, because you still need any cryptocurrency for a blockchain solution, right? If you are putting a solution on a blockchain, you need some kind of a medium of exchange. If you are sure your idea is unique, you say, okay, I will create my currency. That is kind of something to actually play and use it. And if you want your current, and if you are doing that, you can use it as a funding process to your idea. Look at it this way: if you know Elon Musk, launching SpaceX, it's nothing more than crowdfunding. Well, here, sorry, I didn't catch your name. Frank's idea is similar to, let's say, any crowdfunding idea, and he says, okay, to use my idea, you could use it with our token or coin or whatever, cryptocurrency. And if you buy it now, you will earn in the future, because there will be more and more, let's say, the value will increase. And that's how many companies have tried to do fundraising. And in fact, our approach to it, similar to Frank's, was also this way. But our idea, we came to the large trade houses and we said, why are you planning to or going about this blockchain idea and thinking about it? I understand part of it could be the funding, right? It costs a lot of money. I know even Maersk spends a lot of money on this, but this is not the way to spend your own money in today's world. You can. I even told them, why don't I do ICO on basis of already working product where you can use it starting from end of April, but use the funding that I collect to build your supply chain. You see, it's kind of a reverse process. Today, you don't need to have money to launch a rocket to Mars. You can do the crowdfunding.
But is it going to gain in popularity? I was talking to Oksana just before now, and she said she did a little bit of small projects looking at the value of some sort of blockchain within Rickmers.
Yeah.
And at the moment, you couldn't see any immediate value for you as a ship manager.
Again, smiling a bit now. It's a good sentence that you say we don't need money anymore to be able to push some of the innovative projects, for instance using blockchain. Okay, let us then talk about this possibilities a bit later. Yes, we've done some trials. This is not only because of the money, also because of the knowledge, but as you're told, if some of the companies have already invested enough time in this technology and there is something ready in place, there is no need to do it one more time. Can you, for me, I was just thinking now during your explanation, what is then the real case for the line business and for the ship management business?
The real case.
Yeah.
What's the business case for a ship manager?
The key advantage for I don't see any key advantage for the ship management business as it looks today. It might be relevant or something. But for the liner business, the key advantage is that you actually use less of your strapped cash to invest into containers if you can do it less of them by being more efficient and by sharing with your companies.
In fact, here I think not to go into details on any available solutions in transport related. I will just I should just tell you that there are a lot of ideas, right? And the market is increasing. A lot of investors are keen to do money on any blockchain or on any project that has a word blockchain to it. And of course, like in any business, especially in the US, there are a lot of clients or companies that start an idea, they have no clue how to actually execute it, but they do the ICO process. And one of them is ship chain, for example. I always use it as an example that has been created by a guy who was fired from DHL for spending 300 million euro on building an internal solution. And then he went overseas to Silicon Valley, said, okay, I have a bright solution of actually digitalizing everything in transport, and I'm raising money. So he raised $55 million today with having absolutely nothing underneath. So he has the money, he can use it to build it, but will he, or does he know? Does he have any solution?
Sounds like there's a race going on there, isn't there?
Yeah, of course there is now SEC in place, regulators in place, and this industry is evolving, but there's still a lot of people who have a solution that do not have money and they do not know how to do the fundraising. There are people who have the idea and have the money, and there are those who have the idea but have no money, but they do the ICO to get it crowdfunded.
So to create Troll started his presentation with asking about, what was the phrase, whether people actually think that they are not innovative but dynamic or flexible or agile was the word, yes. I'm certainly not then if I can't even remember the word. But does blockchain then, do you think, from what you describe yourselves then as an agile company, you don't believe that the dream you've got for your company in 5 years' time is going to be the same as the dream you've got now? So things will change, things will evolve, you've got to be agile and be dynamic. Do you see how something like blockchain could be integrated into your business or any other business? Could you turn around to Oksana and say, yeah, there is an opportunity here. Here's something, if you're agile enough, there's an opportunity.
Yes, so there is definitely an opportunity with blockchain. If you're looking inside Merck, I think that's what you refer to. So Merck started a joint venture with IBM in terms of creating a new blockchain infrastructure. But they're focusing very much on the infrastructure because it's like, so comparing to something relevant, so Amazon cloud hosting, now everybody's starting to put everything on Amazon cloud hosting, which is a money machine for Amazon because that's control and you have everything in one source there. So basically, what Merck is doing and what I see is a great opportunity. Merck is doing it with startups as well, so not only IBM, is creating the infrastructure in which we can, the simple one is a smart contract and then the digitization of all documents that we have to have today. But I think if you're looking at blockchain, then for comparison, look compared to the internet, for example. So it's difficult to see the exact one use case. You're standing in the, if you rewind to when the internet was invented, you can't really see. So how do I use this thing called the internet? There's a lot of people like you who has great ideas like you and how to utilize it. But there's so many opportunities on how to utilize blockchain. From Twill as well, we really want to utilize blockchain. But my pitch is more about we have to have people who are looking at what is the technology going to look like in 10 years from now. But we also have an immediate need, and we actually have technology available that will enable us to do a lot better for our customers than we're currently doing. So yes, blockchain is gonna be great. Perhaps not the version of blockchain we see today. I think we have some scalability issues on the current blockchain technology. So, but yes, like the internet, I think it will.
Do you feel any more optimistic about blockchain within the operations of Rickmers or ship management
Yes,
business?
of course, we will for sure try this out. In terms of the agile approach, we are already agile and since we're sitting directly in the business since end of the last year, it provides us huge amount of opportunities to talk to the business, to get to know all the customers. In the past it was a bit different. Had to struggle with a lot of silos and self-made problems within the organization. Thus we have to think about your picture, this complexity, make it simple or make it simple for you. Just do it. I think that's why we are now really more than agile, and IT is not just a coder community where people be a translator. I go to the vessel, I spend 2 weeks on the vessel with the crew and understand the business. That's for sure. But what I'm thinking about is it maybe the structure which doesn't allow us to implement all the ideas. I think there are a lot of ideas in the world. Some of them are already heard, some of them not. But there was, for instance, one trial with electronic certificates, digital signature in the last year. And it doesn't help us as a ship manager to work only with some of the flag states, not Singapore or only Germany. All the flag state authorities, all port authorities, they have to play together. If I make our port in Hamburg and do it as the most digitized port in the world, it doesn't help. Because my guys, they go to Bremen, they go to Dubai, they go, Dubai is not a language, but maybe in Africa to Piraeus. And this infrastructure, I think this is then the bottleneck or the showstopper for
well, there is that. If Michael was here still, Michael Bergman, he could answer that because I know he's working on something. There's going to be an announcement on that. Has anybody got any additional questions? Andreas?
Yes. This is a question for Troels. So you created a startup company outside of Damco and Merck. And how do you still benefit from the competitive advantage that Merck and Damco have on their sides, and at the same time, function as a startup? And do you have any advice for other people, companies or people who would like to do this?
So that is the key, right? So that's the balance. I think it's wobbling. So sometimes you feel like I'm too much talking to Maersk and Damco, and other times you feel like, oh, I need to get them with me. It was really a day-to-day balancing. I can say just for practical terms, how we did it is we only have one link between the two companies. So in terms of, we all corporates, reporting line, we have one link. From me to the CEO of Damco. The rest is completely split. That's important. And the second of all is that we have a board structure with external representation that enables us to, well, it pulls it out of our blue thinking when we start becoming blue in our discussions. So it's very easy for executives of Maersk to start talking about operational efficiencies, for example. Somebody has to sometimes slap a little sense into that discussion and say, yeah, but how do you scale exponentially by talking about automating your booking flow internally? Okay, that's difficult to answer, right? So it's about creating that environment in which you can experiment. So getting completely outside physical office space is very important. And then a few links and have external representation in your board. I think that's key for me.
Okay, that's very interesting. But so you do report to the CEO of Damco?
Yes, I do.
But if you can answer this question, is there not a risk that Damco has other interests than Twill should be having? If you look at Twill as something competing with the rest of the startup world.
Yes, definitely. And that's also what I think that the crux of your question is how do you ensure that balance? How do you ensure you actually utilize the capabilities? How do you make sure that Damco has 11,000 people all around the world? How do you make sure that you utilize the customs clearance expertise of the guys sitting in Manila when you need that expertise at the same time as you work as an independent? So the way we struck the balance is exactly just one reporting line and then nothing more than that. And it's up to me and Klaus, who's the CEO, to have our discussions and then we battle it out. But yes, it's a risk. But I think that's how we set it up from the beginning. From my point of view right now, it's working pretty well. But I think in the first 6 months, we were stepping on a landmine every week, basically. But the good thing about stepping on a landmine is that it's gone. And then you can step there now safely in that area. So it took some time, but now I think we are on good ground.
Let's take a question right at the back and then one forward. Yeah.
I have a question for, and maybe also a remark for Frank, and maybe also for Alexander. So my question is, and my remark, the idea of getting a blockchain, everybody knows or has the success of the Bitcoin in his mind, and comes up with a solution and brings lots of things. But I think the big difference between a blockchain like a Bitcoin and what you guys have in mind is that Bitcoin is an open source project, so everybody can look what is in it, everybody can download this and look into the code and also play with it, and also the ledger, what is created, it's a public ledger, so everybody can download this ledger and also work with it. What I not really understand and is why, and maybe I'm also wrong, but I have a little bit the feeling that you guys are trying to do something completely different. So it's not public, it's not open source, it's something what you guys develop in-house. So nobody knows really what you're building. And also the data you're creating is not public available. So, and my question, especially to Frank, is this really, do you have this plan also going open source and open this? Or is this something you want to make an ICO, get a lot of money or maybe coins or whatever, have your own closed solution and have your own data, and then that is it? So that's my question.
Yeah, it could be a good idea to raise a lot of public money and then go to Bahamas and spend it.
That was not the question.
No,
the question
but
was, is it an open source project and is it then the ledger openly available, or is it everything proprietary and closed?
The ledger is publicly available. You can go and trade container coins on the trading platforms that you have. So that's absolutely open. The whole system is a system being developed. I think you can read about all the details of what it's going to contain, what it is that you are going towards. As you move ahead, it was of course, as you have more information to share, as you move on, more and more information will be shared out there. It will be an open platform, but since it's users that put in, that has their data in there, then the user can decide how much do I want to show. So let's say that it's all about dry containers, as I said. So a Maersk line, who owns or operates a number of containers, they can decide that, well, I have a lot of containers in Finland and I probably have too many. But I think I'm very good positioned in Poland with my containers. So in Poland I'm not going to show any availability. In Finland I'm going to show it because maybe Hamburg is interested in subchartering one of my units up there. While in Poland I don't want to do it because I think I'm better positioned with my equipment than Hamburg is, so I can get better access to the cargo. Did that answer your question? I'm a little unsure.
No. The
Okay.
question is if it's what you are building, is it an open source project?
Do you mean the software for the database?
Yeah.
Ah, that is
Can
open
I-
source.
Yeah.
Okay, can I download the code and build my own platform with it?
No. That's open.
It's not that open source.
Well, the use of the you can take that into consideration.
Should I
Go on.
tell you about? So with us, it was actually more of a challenge because it actually costed me some guts to launch in October because the critical mass we needed to actually prove the concept we introduced was to open our internal data flow. So at one point, all our clients suddenly started instantly seeing all my competitors' ships. So it was a challenge, to actually create a product which is competing to my usual business. And at the moment, in fact, to have that open source code, and eventually it will work like, for example, I think Truls had Trivago, Booking.com, and maybe some other solution. So when you book a hotel, all these platforms would know that there is no hotel room available, for example, right? So the same kind of solution is what we are going to provide on the market. But before we do that, we have to make sure it works properly. So once we create an algorithm that helps you instantly do in shipping what you do in real life correctly, we are going to let it in the open source, and that is why we do our crowdfunding as well, to allow us to earn from the making of it and benefiting from this to then multiply.
I'm going to go to Pierre first, and then you, if I may. Pierre.
Yeah, I'm sorry to switch back to Trolls. I was wondering if the initiative with Quill, so I'm doing a talk on a little bit later on what all the work cooperation between startups and corporates. So you're right on the spot with what you presented. But I wanted to see if Quill was pitched to Damco or if it was Damco that had the idea to set this up.
Did Damco come to you, or did you go to Damco?
Damco came to me.
Yeah.
But so it was part of the strategic review. So very simplistically, Damco is two revenue streams. One for complicated supply chain solutions for larger customers, and the second one is the freight forwarding arm. And both of those were analyzed in terms of what is the future business and the future revenue stream of these. And one came up short, so to speak. So we had to do something. So we pitched the idea internally. But we had external help to do the analysis of our strategic review.
So you guys operate within the umbrella of an accelerator, or are you within a portfolio of other startups, or are you just by yourself?
We started with an incubator. So we had assistance within the first 7 months, where basically it was actually quite interesting. We did a co-structure, so a co-organization. I had a co-CEO that came from a company where you used to incubating companies, and a co-CPO and a co-CTO, and the roles we needed. And then basically at the end of 7 months, you fly solo and you see if the winds will carry you. We're still flying.
Go down to this question.
I want to go back to your question. I think what was the actual question, or what is the actual is whether your blockchain you are planning is a permission-based corporate blockchain hosted only for permission-based data centers, or as a public blockchain as Bitcoin and Ether, everybody in their living room can install and be part of the network. And the answer to that is actually yes, at least your internal token is permission-based. It's planned to be permission-based, so it's not public because it's everywhere installable. But I think it has to be, because otherwise it wouldn't work. Because the problem with the public blockchain is, scalability. It's like Bitcoin has transactions, capabilities of seven transactions worldwide per minute or something like that. And Ether has a little bit more, maybe with theories like Lightning Network at one point of time will be 700 or maybe 7,000. But this is not enough by far to have a real world application as you are planning. So the problem here is, on one hand, it's also from legal point of view, it's very recommendable to have this permission-based internal solution. But then, when it's a permission-based internal solution, what is the difference between a cloud-based data bank hosted in with your favorite cloud provider and the blockchain solution? It only becomes a blockchain solution when you have this distribution problem. Different eyes, different authorities looking into the data bank.
I think I might have to let you discuss that one over coffee.
No, but I can quickly answer that, if I may, Frank. So that's actually why the ICO process is so important, because as I disrupted my shipping company, not yet though, it's working, but as I'm disrupting my shipping company, to create ShipNext, I will have to disrupt the model, the money-making model of ShipNext to create a distributed ledger. Until then, I have to make sure that I have income. So this is, how I do the fundraising, for example, in the future by creating my own currency. And when I open up this code to Cargill, for example, and let them have the code used in ShipNext to do their order book against their ships matching, and they will say, okay, thank you very much, we downloaded it, we are going to use it. And it's going to be linked with all the other Louis Dreyfus, ArcelorMittal, you name it, right? Koch or Yara. If they will be using it, I will not have any more income. So by then, I will have to, let's say, use either the cryptocurrency I created, because then, with so much users around it, the value will increase. This is how Bitcoin got, Bitcoin founders got rich, because the users using or investing in Bitcoin has suddenly multiple. Or I will have to be part of their system, like a shareholder of the ecosystem they are creating.
Good. We're running late now, so we're going to stop for coffee. But a quick question to Oksana. Do you feel any more optimistic about using any of these tools within your business? Or do you still think...
I was not pessimistic at all, because the first trial in the company this didn't bring so good output as we have expected. But of course I've learned a lot, and I will get in touch with you, Alexander, so that we can see, for instance, for the line for our EDI.
Actually, Rickmers is a competitor of my shipping company, and they instantly they are a competitor in the shipping part, and they instantly see all the cargoes, let's say, which we receive as a company. So this is already an open source.
Thank you to the 4 panelists for that session. Thank you. We got there. Hopefully, there's some coffee now.